Traders Corner is proudly brought to you by IG Markets South Africa. Visit igmarkets.co.za.
Welcome back. You're watching Traders Corner, Summit's real-time, real money trading show. As always, we're joined by Garth McKenzie, the founder and editor of Traders Corner. Garth, welcome.
Hi, Julieta.
Garth, let's start off talking about Coronation, which is a share that you finally seem to have had some joy with. Yeah. Tell us about this particular trade.
Yes, it's finally worked out for us, and we've actually banked a profit on this one. It's taken some time, but if we have a look at the screen, I'll show you quickly why we did the trade and what the thinking was, and the fact that it's worked out quite nicely for us. So what we initially had was I'd identified this overhead resistance area at 30 Rand a share, and you can see that the stock's bumped up against that resistance many times in May this year and again in July a couple of times. We also had an uptrend going back to the lows of June, and each time the stock pulled back to that uptrend, you can see it found support and it moved higher. Now, typically what you would invariably favor here is for the share to break out through that resistance, because you've got a situation where you've got the tussle between buyers and sellers, and the buyers are strong enough to make sure that the share consistently makes higher lows every time it pulls back, yet the sellers are not strong enough to push it any lower, and they try and keep it down at the 30 Rand resistance level. But ultimately, if you think about that as a tussle between buyers and sellers, you'd invariably back the buyers to win that battle and for the share to break out to the upside. So with that in mind, what I did was I bought 5,500 CFDs for our portfolio at 29.60 Rand. And the reason I did that just below the resistance area was because I felt that the breakout could be quite violent when it potentially happened, and I wanted to be on the bus, as it were, when it broke out. I didn't want to have to try and chase it on a breakout. So anyway, I had to be patient with this because the breakout didn't happen as quickly as I thought it would. I mean, we bought this in early August, and you can see that it bumbled along sideways for the whole of the rest of August and into middle of September.
So quite a protracted tussle.
Absolutely, yeah. But you know, it never went near our stop loss, and we decided to just be patient with this one and hold on tight, because I felt all along that that structure still looked bullish and that we would ultimately see the breakout through that resistance level, which has now happened, as you can see. The intention here always was to sell it at 32 Rand. That was my target price, and that's where it's got to now. You can see that the share is quite overbought at this point in time. So I've sold it. We banked 10,725 Rand of profits after all costs. Because we held it for about 6 weeks, we've had to incur a bit of financing, time value, financing costs on a CFD. So we, in addition to the commission that we paid on the entry leg and the exit leg, we've also had to pay away a bit more financing than what I might have liked to. But you know, the interest rates are quite low these days, and your financing costs on a CFD are not particularly prohibitive, so it's fine. So we make 10,725 Rand after cost, and I'm very happy with it.
And I know that you said before, if you were a longer-term investor, which is not what the show is about, but if you were, you would probably still hang on to Coronation.
I certainly would. I mean, I think it's a great business. It's well run, great management. It's a fantastic dividend payer. It's on a huge dividend yield, and that breakout to new highs is very bullish. You know, you might find at some stage it's going to pull back to that 30 Rand area again and retest it, and that would probably be a good time to buy it again. But if you're a long-term investor, absolutely hang tight. There's no reason to sell it. We're just short-term traders on this show, and that's why I'm banking the profit here.
Are you not being overly hasty, maybe given, is it because you had to wait so long for the trade to do what you wanted to, that now it has done that, you cashed in? I mean, there is an argument that maybe you want to try and ride this one.
Yeah, that's right, and I think there is certainly a case to be made for trying to ride your profits, and possibly that's something I've not been that great at doing this year. If you think about some of our trades which have really been good this year, we've had Aspen as a case in point, which we did very well out of, but I did sell it, and in retrospect we could have actually made a lot more money if we had held on. So perhaps the same here, but I think the key is we had a strategy, and we've stuck to it, and I think that's important. As a trader, you need to have a strategy, identify that up front, and then stick with it, and that's what's happened here. So I'm comfortable to have stuck to the strategy, and we've got the reward we wanted.
Yeah, certainly not a profit to be sneezed at. What about Naspers? That's also been doing, well, heading in the right direction.
Yeah, that's also working out nicely for us, and we're still holding this one here. Just a quick look at why we did this trade. First of all, we had this upward trend going back over the last year or so. You can see that that came in recently in the beginning of September. Also, we had this overhead, what was previously overhead resistance, at around about 475, that sort of area. And we saw the stock break out through that resistance in mid-August, and then a nice controlled consolidation throughout the rest of August and into the beginning of September in what looks like a bull flag pattern over there. And my thinking at the time was that you wanted to be buying the stock on that retest of the breakout area, and it was a double support area in that it was the retest of the breakout and it was that upward trend that I'd identified going back over the last year. So, and it was very oversold, as you can see on the stochastic there. So, a number of reasons for why I felt that this was a good trade to be getting into. I like buying strong stocks when they consolidate and when they pull back, and this to me was a classic opportunity to do exactly that. So we bought 380 CFDs for our portfolio, and I paid 472 Rand for those. Set a stop loss quite loose at 458 Rand because I didn't want to get stopped out unnecessarily. And it's worked. It's broken out to the upside, as you can see, and my target here for this short-term trade is 520 Rand, and I'm sticking with that. I think that we'll get that 520 Rand. Whether we get it soon or in the next few weeks, I'm not sure, but I'm confident that we'll get that. What's also interesting is we've picked up the dividend over the last week. It paid a 3.35 Rand dividend, and we pick up that dividend, so we make 1,273 Rand on the dividend as well.
I didn't realize you could actually get dividends with CFDs.
Yes,
it shows
you do.
how ignorant I am.
You do get dividends with your CFDs. They pay you as you would with an ordinary share. You do receive the dividend in your CFD account. And what's interesting also is that it's actually it's exempt of tax as well. I guess because the market makers are companies, and remember that companies don't pay dividend withholding tax, so they pass that on to the CFD holder. So it's quite an interesting dynamic.
Quite a sneaky little way into a tax-free dividend-paying share.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Garth. All right, so Naspers is working out quite nicely. You've got the dividend. Let's get onto this week's, I suppose, it's a currency that you want to focus on, and it's the Rand, really. Why are you focusing your attention on it?
Well, for a couple of reasons. I think, first of all, there's no doubting that the Rand has generally been on a weakening trajectory. If you look at that graph, it goes back about 18 months, and you can see that the Rand has gradually been weakening against the dollar. You can also see the 200-day moving average, which is that orange-colored moving average on the graph there, pointing upwards, which means the Rand is generally it's trending weaker gradually. What we've had over the last 4 months or so is the Rand trading into a triangle formation, and regular viewers of the show will know that these patterns are typically continuation patterns within a trend. They normally will break out in the direction of the prevailing trend when they break out. That certainly is what happens 65% of the time. So around about 2/3 of the time you'll find that when the breakout happens, it will break out in the direction of the trend. So we're watching this very carefully because this currency has been consolidating, and I expect that we're going to see a breakout here at some stage. Also interestingly is to note is that we've got this 8.55 Rand overhead resistance area on the chart there. Now, if we were to get a breakout from this triangle, what you do with the triangle pattern is you take the height of that pattern at the broadest point, and then you project it from where the pattern breaks out. Now, I've indicated the arrows in both directions there because it could go either way, but I certainly do favor a breakout to the top side, in other words, for the Rand to weaken. That would project a target of about 8.90 Rand on the currency. If, on the other hand, we were to break stronger, then and a break stronger would entail probably a break below 8.10 Rand and confirmed on a move below 8 Rand. Then I think we've got about 7.60 Rand in our sights. But certainly my view and my bias is more towards the Rand weakening. And if we do see a break out to the weaker side, in other words, we break out the top of that triangle, it'll also then push the currency potentially through that 8.55 Rand resistance, which is, from a technical perspective, that would be quite a bearish development for the Rand. In other words, it would probably preempt a medium-term Rand weakness scenario. So, these are the technicals that I'm talking about.
I mean, there've got to be some fundamental factors as well, and there's a lot of factors that affect the currency, and those who've called the Rand, that path is littered with many corpses.
Absolutely, certainly. This is a technical view, but I think if you've got to think about the fundamental aspect of it and what could potentially provide a catalyst for this rand to move weaker, the first thing that springs to my mind is the ANC conference in Mangaung, however you say it, in
Bloemfontein.
in December. Okay, so it's a couple of months away. But if you look at the rhetoric leading up to this, I think some of the discussion and topics and themes that are being bandied about could potentially create a little bit of unease with foreign investors. And if you think about it, we've had foreigners being aggressive buyers into our equity and our bond market over the last couple of years. They're quite heavily exposed to South Africa. So if we were to see them become uneasy and start to downweight their exposure to South Africa, that could potentially be a catalyst to drive the rand weaker. But I mean, I'm not here to make political statements and whatever, it's not my place. But if I look at the chart, to me, it's preempting the likelihood of a break week. I think the rand looks very vulnerable at this point in time.
Also, certainly the sentiment around the currency is, I think, quite negative at the moment, given events in the mining sector and, as you say, in the run-up to Bloemfontein in December.
Yeah, it is. So there's a number of potential risk factors that are potentially going to plague the rand. So be that as it may, I think we're looking at the technicals here. I mean, certainly there are a number of fundamental arguments to be made as to why the rand could potentially weaken from here. I think if we were to trade this, and bear in mind we're not actually doing a trade this week, but we are certainly going to be watching this very, very closely in the next couple of weeks. I would ideally look to try and short the rand. If it got down to about 8 Rand 10, 8 Rand 20 to the dollar, any short-term strength to that area, I would look to then short the currency against the dollar. And there are two schools of thought here. Either you could do it on a pullback towards that area, and then I would look to set a stop loss at about 7 Rand 90. And what you can see on the chart there is that I've got the red and green block, which I often use. The red block indicates the risk that we would take. So in other words, entering it at around about 8 Rand 10, 8 Rand 20, with a stop loss at 7 Rand 90. And then the green block indicates the potential reward up to 8 Rand 90 as a possible target. So you can see by doing it this way, by trying to get in on the action whilst that triangle is still forming, but not waiting for the breakout to actually happen, you get a far better risk to reward ratio by doing it that way. All right. The flip side could be to wait for the breakout through 8 Rand 40, which is the top of that triangle pattern, and then go short of the rand. But you'd have to leave your stop loss in the same place, which would be at 7 Rand 90. And you can just see by eyeballing it there that your risk to reward ratio becomes pretty much 1-to-1, which is not fantastic. I always like to try and get trades where we can get at least a 2-to-1 and preferably a 3-to-1 risk to reward ratio. So ideally the way I would try and play this is to short rands if we get it moved to 8 Rand 10, 8.20ish.
Okay, so trade to watch. To wrap up with Garth, what does the portfolio look like?
All right, it looks like this. We've got Naspers still running that one with a profit of nearly 11,000 Rand there. Then we've got our put spread option and our Anglo Gold position that we closed out a few weeks ago. And then Coronation, we've now banked a profit of 10,725 Rand. So the portfolio value is almost 377,000. So we've actually gone over 50% return for the year to date. So it's a new high for the Traders Corner portfolio, which I'm very pleased about.
Fantastic performance. And last word on your high probability trading courses.
Yeah, next high probability trading course is on the 13th of October in Johannesburg. Anyone that's interested in attending can email me on garth@traderscorner.co.za, or they can get a hold of me via Twitter or Facebook as well.
Okay, Garth, great. We have to leave it there. Thanks so much as always for joining us.
Thanks.
It's Garth McKenzie, founder and editor of Traders Corner.
Traders Corner was proudly brought to you by IG Markets South Africa. Trade the South Africa 40 Index for over 140 share CFDs at just 0.2% commission on our intuitive, award-winning online platform. Visit igmarkets.co.za to find out more.